My voice is giving out. It's like the beginning of winter sickness season, and so I've had a slight cold for about a week and a half, and I've been managing so far. But I'm worried. Like I'm starting to sound worse slowly. I don't think it was I was singing Bowling for Soup in the car today. I think it's actually the cold catching up with me, but we'll see what happens.
Sorry. I feel like you are constantly lightly sick.
Well, he's got a kid, a young kid, and so do you, so you should also be constantly lightly sick.
No, I'm healthy as a mule or something.
I'm not sick all summer. All summer, I'm great. It's one of the reasons why I love summer and why I don't like the rest of the year. It's one of the big ones, because the rest of the year, I'm pretty much always either getting sick, or was just sick.
Delightful.
We'll see once Adam gets old enough not to be entirely covered with the boogers of the other people in school if this stops. And then we'll know whether it's you or the kid. Because I remember getting sick way more when my kids were younger too, but I do less now.
Yeah, I think it matters a lot. Like, you know, like right now, like he's not only is he just only in second grade, but even if like his age group starts developing basic hygiene skills, they still have like a lot of like younger siblings who are still in preschool or kindergarten. So like they're all in the same house together. So like I feel like until probably middle school, this is going to keep happening.
Yeah. Have you had a lice outbreak yet?
Surprisingly not. We've dodged that one so far. And like they do get lice here and there, like in this area. It just hasn't hit us yet.
Yeah, it amazed me. Like we used to do lice checks at school all the time in elementary school, and I never got it. Right. And I figured like, well, lice is a thing they check for and they have to check for it. And when anybody gets into school, they got to check the whole school, and you all go down to the nurse and you wait in the big line and you go through like, but you know, it's not that I'd never seen it. I'd never knew anybody who had it. It was just like a thing that we did. And then I got kids and I got lice everywhere. Just
delightful.
Constant lice.
Anyway, we should start with some follow-up, and we should remind you that the ATP Holiday Store is open for business ladies and gentlemen. ATP.fm/store. You can get your 6-color shirts in light or dark modes. You can get your old school ATP logo shirt, your hoodie, your hat, your pins. It's all there for the taking. So please don't be that person that listens to me and says, oh yeah, I'll remember, I'll do it later. Don't be that person. Every single time, at least one, usually a handful of people says, oh, I forgot. Oh no, can you bring it back? I forgot. No, we can't bring it back. I'm sorry. We can't. Go now. ATP.fm/store. You'll be glad you did. The sale is available, or the stuff is available until Sunday, November 17, ATP time. Please go ATP.fm/store and get yourself some sweet, sweet, sweet ATP merch. Moving on, Marco, you have had AirPod Pros for what, like a week now, week and a half?
It's AirPods Pro, Casey.
Oh, God. I'm so sorry. I know we talked about it last week, but, you know, now that you're a week and change on, are you still enjoying them? Is this kind of like the Apple Watch where you flirt with it and then put it away for a year? What's going on?
As of last episode, I think I had spent only a couple of hours with them so far, just like walking around my house, basically. Since then, I've done a number of dog walks with them. I have not taken a plane, but I have taken 2 ferry rides with them. And the dog walks also have tested the noise cancellation because it is leaf blowing and lawn mowing season. It is, as we record this, early November. And this is one of the few times of year where people in my town are allowed to use leaf blowers. And boy, do they. Constantly. And so normally, you know, it's the kind of situation that normally I'm walking my dog. I have some kind of small portable headphones on, and they never isolate that well. And many times I actually don't want them to. Like I often wear aftershocks for that purpose. And so normally if I'm walking by something very loud, like a lawnmower or a leaf blower, I just have to pause the podcast as I walk by because I'm just not going to hear what's being said. With the AirPods Pro, I use the long hold gesture on the stick to enable noise cancellation as I walk by something loud like that, and it works. And I'm able to keep the podcast playing. Now I don't even need to turn it up. I can leave it exactly at the regular, like normal volume I had it. Add the noise cancellation, and it works very, very well. Like you still hear the leaf blower, but it takes it down a significant volume. The noise cancellation, I think I underrated last episode because I hadn't brought it into a super loud environment. I was only playing with like around the house. So I would say last episode I overstated how good the sound quality was. They still do sound good, but I am missing a lot of that treble detail. And so I still stand by my statement that they sound better than anything Bose has ever made, better than any earbuds I've ever tried, and better than many regular headphones I've tried. They are great for earbuds. They are good for headphones, but they are not great for headphones. But still, considering their size and their portability and their features and frankly their price, like good in-ear monitors, which these aren't even in-ear monitors physically, but like good in-ear monitors that can sound better than this tend to cost more than $250, and that's even for like the basic wired kind. This has like all the wireless stuff and everything, and it's Apple and it has all the features. So for what these are, for the value they provide, for the quality they provide, the balance they provide, the sound quality really is remarkable. I would like a basic EQ, even if it's as simple as like a bass and treble slider. Even that, a 2-slider screen would be great. And all their competitors do this now. Sony has it, Bose has it, like all the other headphone makers have added EQs in their apps in recent years. I just hope Apple gets around to that. I know it's against their style to offer control over things, but maybe this would be something that would be worth it. I think, because I want the same thing for the HomePod, right? The HomePod, I now have, I don't know, 15 of them, and whatever I have in my house. I have a lot of HomePods. They're in lots of rooms now, and I would like to have like a treble and bass slider on those. Mostly the bass slider, actually, to turn it down in the bathroom. but like, just a small amount of control would go a long way here. But otherwise, though, the sound is very good for what they are, and it's great for what they are. It's very good in absolute terms, and so I would say the noise cancellation is significantly better than I thought it was. I haven't had a chance to take them on a plane yet, but I've already decided that the next time I fly anywhere, I'm going to take only the AirPods Pro and see how it is, and actually try it, and not take my big Sonys or my Boses.
How do you do with comfort? Because if I recall correctly, and feel free to correct me, you can wear the traditional non-Pro AirPods for, I don't know, like half an hour, I think you said, before they get deeply uncomfortable. And now with the AirPods Pro, have you done any extended listening with them? Is that better, worse, different, the same, etc.?
Long as I can go without discomfort on regular AirPods is about 20 minutes.
Okay.
With the Pros, I have gone an hour straight so far, and there's no discomfort at all.
Oh, well, okay, so that's a pretty big improvement. And what size tips are you wearing, just out of curiosity? Not that it really matters. But...
The default ones, the mediums that come on them. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even tried the other ones, because the mediums, they pass the ear fit test. They feel good to me. They sound good to me. So I'm like, all right, not going to mess with it. So far, I have not worn them for long enough to reach a point of discomfort, and I've worn them for about an hour numerous times. So I know it isn't just like a little fluke thing.
Sure.
I've also worn them in numerous different temperatures. Like I've worn them when I was hot and when I was cold, and they fit differently in each condition. Like when I'm cold, they fit a little bit looser. They feel like they might slide out, although they haven't yet. They haven't budged, so I don't know. But anyway, so far so good. I continue to be extremely pleased with them. The controls are fine. I still do miss having a volume control. Like any other headphone I've ever tried, there's a volume control on the headphone. I know this is not new to AirPods people, but not having volume on there is really annoying. I understand why it's not there. Like I think it would be difficult to wedge it in there somewhere, but regardless, it is not there. And they did make the sticks smaller compared to the original AirPods, to the point where like I can put on or take off a sweatshirt and not knock them out of my ears. So like I do appreciate how small they are.
Ah, that is nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I recognize that part of why I don't have volume control is that they're so small, and it is nice being so small. I will say I don't give a crap what they look like, and to a large degree, I don't know what they look like because I never see them. If I'm using them, I can't see them. If I'm not using them, they're in the case, and they're in my fingers for such a brief time on the transition. Either way, if you asked me to draw them, I wouldn't be able to. I don't know what they look like.
Well, it is We Draw Wednesday.
Yes, I know.
So, speaking of Tiff, did she get a pair? And I don't recall what her perspective on regular AirPods were. So, did she get a pair of the Pros?
Not yet. Merely because we've been busy, and she has no problems with the regular ones. But that is on the list of things to consider. And
John, none of these have entered your house yet. Is that correct?
No, there's been some interest, perhaps for the holidays, but I'm still just taking a wait and see attitude.
I mean, they're really good.
Everyone I've spoken to says they're the AirPods, but better. And I friggin' love my AirPods. So this sounds like it has Casey written all over it. But I just bought AirPods when the Qi ones came out, and I just feel guilty because Aaron doesn't really have any interest in taking mine. And I mean, obviously, as we discussed last week, like reselling them seems a little weird. So
yeah, it's a little weird.
I don't know. Like, it just seems so wasteful to get rid of or stop using my perfectly good non-pro AirPods, my amateur AirPods, just to get these pros or the pro, whatever. I don't care. But anyway,
do you have any nieces or nephews? I forget.
Actually, as of today, I have a brand new one. But
there you go. Infants love AirPods.
Yeah, why not?
Here, kids, want some of Uncle Casey's earwax?
Yeah, exactly. It's gross.
Can you like repurpose them to maybe be used at a dedicated location in your house? So, for instance, like to have one next to your bed for bedtime listening, or to leave a pair always next to the TV station, like next to the couch for like TV watching.
Day AirPods and night AirPods.
God damn it, John! You beat me to it.
That's because I'm always on offense, Casey.
Yep. Nice.
Well, now that is well done. I have to bow to that one. That was well done. But I don't know. I mean, this is like the first world problem, right? Oh, I really want the new AirPods, and my current ones don't suck. What am I going to do? Like it's a terrible thing to even talk about. So I should just move on. But I do want them. Maybe they'll end up on a Christmas or Hanukkah list, just in case someone's feeling particularly generous. But we'll see what happens.
I still feel like they're not regular AirPods, but better, because they're fundamentally different. These go into your ears, and the other ones don't. Like, they don't go super into your ears. They're not in ear, but that's a pretty big difference. So if that difference, if the expectation was these are just like my old AirPods, but just they sound better and have noise canceling, not true at all. Like, they go in your ear differently, right? And so that's my main interpretation. Now, if you used earpods like that before, or earbuds, whatever the hell the generic term is, like that before, and they're fine, well, then you're fine. But if not, like, again, it gets into my whole thing of like trying them on or trying somebody else's and wiping them off. Like, you do have to figure out whether you're okay with anything going in your ear canal. And then you have to find out, are you okay with this specific thing going in your ear canal?
No, that's totally fair. When I said they're like AirPods, but better, all I meant was if you take all of the things that I like about AirPods, from everything I've understood, the AirPods Pro, fitment and whatnot aside, everything seems to be better. It has noise canceling. The battery life is the same, or roughly the same, even with the noise canceling. They're smaller. It's all of the features seem to be the same, if not better.
Except for the tapping is another one. I saw a couple people who said they preferred the tapping to the squeezing. Obviously, I've heard lots of people on the opposite as well. But it could just be what you're used to. But that is another difference. Like, and as Marco pointed out last week, you don't have the option to do the tapping anymore, so you're going to be squeezing.
Yeah. All right, speaking of the AirPods Pro, there's some interesting news with regard to the battery, thanks to iFixit. Apparently, they're using a particularly large, to my eye, but otherwise basically standard button cell battery like you would see in a watch. I guess not the kind of watch that Marco uses because you're too cool for those, but the kind of watch that I would use before the Apple Watch. It's just kind of like a watch battery, which is, it's fairly surprising, isn't it?
It's watch battery shaped, but it is still a lithium battery and a different voltage and everything. You can't replace it like a watch battery. Also, you can't really get to it.
Yeah. But it's cylindrical though, but like in a flat pizza shape, like a watch battery is. And more importantly, it's not in the stick. So one of the reasons the stick is so small is because there's no battery in there. So they put it elsewhere. They put it in the chunky body part. Yeah,
like what's interesting to me about this is that the interior layout of the AirPods Pro is completely different than the regular AirPods. Like, it isn't just like a simple evolution of the same design. Like, it's a total internal rearrangement.
All right, moving right along. Tell me about the charging light. This is something I've noticed with my Qi-enabled AirPods. I guess it kind of AirPods 2, whatever you want to call them. That when you sit it on the mat, on the Qi charging mat, it'll light up on the exterior as opposed to my original AirPods, which had the light on the interior. It'll light up on the exterior and show you kind of what the situation is, and then after a few seconds it goes out, and the only way to get it back is to take it off the charger and put it back on and see if it turns from, say, amber to green or what have you. But apparently that's not the same on the AirPods Pro. What's going on here, John?
Yeah, this is partially spawned from the iFixit teardown when they found this thing inside the case and they weren't sure what it was, and it looked like it was like a microphone or something. But whatever it is, that's probably the hardware mechanism that allows the case to know when you tap it. It's probably either some kind of mic or vibration sensor. Basically boils down to the same thing when it's embedded inside the case. So if you want to see the charge state of your AirPods Pro case, just tap it and the light will go on again and you can see what color it is. If maybe that will work on the upcoming 16-inch MacBook Pros as well. If you're wondering how much charge is left in it and it's sitting there, you can tap it, and then I guess, I don't know, lights will shine through laser etched holes in the aluminum that are invisible otherwise. I don't know.
One thing that's disappointing, though, is that this doesn't work when you're charging it through a cable.
Yeah, it's only on the mat.
Oh, interesting.
When you're charging through a cable, you have to like open the lid slightly and then close it to get it to show whether the light's green or orange.
Yeah, which is weird because like the tapping, like the sensor for sensing tapping, like that doesn't care whether it's on a mat or not. I don't quite know why that feature isn't always available.
Yeah, it's weird.
And then John's favorite subject, the case jiggle click. Does it exist in the AirPods Pro, John?
Let's see.
I meant to ask about that on the show when Marco first got his. I've heard lots of reports from people, and here's the thing: with the revised AirPods, whatever we call them, AirPods Series 2, not the Pros, but the ones that I have and that Casey has. That's the one where I first noticed the side to side thing. But some people got those AirPods, and their case doesn't do that. So it's like it's a manufacturing variability thing. So they don't all do it on the old one. So I have heard from at least one or two people who say their AirPods Pro case goes side to side, and it sounds like Marco, yours does as well.
It's very subtle.
Well, I can hear it a little
it's
bit.
Very little.
I still feel like it is much more prevalent on the second generation AirPods than it was on the first. I don't know how prevalent it is in the Pros, but I haven't heard from anybody with Pros whose case doesn't do that.
Alrighty. And then Kieran Sr. says, pro tips for the AirPods Pro. Instead of long squeezing, then squeezing once to pause and enable transparency when someone talks to you, just create a shortcut named Be Quiet. So then, quote unquote, hey dingus, be quiet, quote, will allow you to hear. That is very clever, but I can't imagine somebody walking up to me and saying, hey dingus, be quiet.
It's like what I was talking about the ear tapping when I tap the things on my ear and people think I was pointing to them going, I'm listening to music and you're being so rude. Can you imagine trying to say an activation for like they're never going to hear the hey dingus. So they're going to think they walked up to talk to you and you just turned to them immediately and said, be quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, like, who are these people who Siri works that quickly for?
Yeah, I don't know. They have very patient people asking to talk to them.
Like I've tried using Siri like for volume control and stuff like that. It's just too slow. Like I'd rather just take my phone out because you'll say hey thing, volume up or whatever, and wait, delay, and then it goes up, and then your music might resume or might not. Like it bothers me.
Same thing with the fast forward and rewind and stuff. It's the same thing. It's just so painful. You might as well just, for me, even just to walk over to the other room and do it.
Yeah, like I don't like using Siri for anything that requires like quick interactiveness, like media control. Frankly, like if I want to ask it a question or have it send a message or something, fine. I'm glad it's there, but I don't see any use for it for media controls.
Yeah, and as we pointed out last time this came up, like the most expedient and safest way to deal with this is to reach up and pull the thing out of your ear, which will pause the music or the whatever you're listening to, and also is the least likely to be interpreted by the person trying to talk to you as something rude.
and as I noted on Twitter the other day, a neat little touch is that if you're in noise canceling mode, but you pull one earbud out, it pauses the music and it turns the other earbud into transparency mode. So you can hear the people around you more easily when you've pulled it out, and then you put it back in, it puts noise canceling back on. Super nice. And actually, if you want to have like one ear noise canceling, there's an accessibility option to disable that behavior basically and allow it to have like split noise canceling in just one ear. But by default, it transparencyizes the other ear, which is really nice.
Oh, that's very cool. Last week, we talked on the show about hearing aids and things of that nature, and apparently the FDA has cleared the way for over-the-counter hearing aids, which I think, John, is going to make you very excited, not because you need them, but because this is something you've been thinking about a lot lately.
Yeah, this is just seems like some deregulation of the hearing aid market, where previously to get one you had to consult with a doctor and they were expensive, and it's kind of like the thing that came to mind for whatever reason, probably because I have school age kids, is like the TI-84 calculators or whatever. Do you remember those when you were in school?
Oh yeah.
They still sell those, and they still cost like $100 and something, and they must cost like 50 cents to make, like because the stuff that's in them has not changed since we were kids, and they're still like $100 and something. It's a pretty big disconnection. The price is held aloft by schools asking the students to buy it, and induce demand from saying you have to get this for your kid. Anyway, it's slightly different in the hearing aid market, but this is a nice timing coincidence for Apple to potentially get into the market, because Apple would probably not want to deal with all the regulatory stuff, and they're not going to sell a lot of anything that you have to go to talk to your doctor about first. I mean, I think there have always been over-the-counter things that you can get, but like real proper hearing aids that serious people buy when they actually need it are going to get in the coming year in the U.S. Much easier to buy without having to consult with medical professionals. This, according to AARP magazine, and they should know.
So just for anyone who's not American, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, which regulates this sort of thing, and AARP, American Associated of Retired Persons. I think this is often called pensioners in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. Basically someone who is done with work and usually like in the 60s to 70-year-old range. And
it's what makes you start feeling really old when you start getting the solicitations by mail from AARP, and you're like, oh, no.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Also, Ryan Budish wrote to us, or to you, John, the following. I wear hearing aids, and I think you gave them short shrift on ATP. High-end aids have multiple microphones, do lots of specialized processing, have modes for all kinds of challenging situations, and can cost over 10 times more than the AirPods Pro. Any retort, John?
Yeah, so that cost thing is kind of what I'm getting at with the calculator. Like, they are very expensive, both because the most advanced ones probably contain much more expensive technology than AirPods, but also because their price is artificially inflated by the weird supply-demand, medical establishment stuff that goes into them. I did hear from a lot of other people who said that they used hearing aids and thought that Apple could definitely do some great things here. But from all the feedback I've been getting, I feel like, and I kind of felt like this last week as well, that like the place where Apple can innovate in this space is kind of where they usually do. Like, we think of them as being like the high-end brand or the fancy brand, but it's, I don't use a car analogy. Like, there's high-end brands, and then there's, Pagani, or like there's a separate tier for like the real high-end, or probably in watches. Marco could give better examples, right? So BMW is a high-end thing, but it's not the same as Ferrari, and it's also not the same as like one of those boutique brands. What's the Koenigsegg? Yeah. Anyway, so I feel like there's that same hierarchy here, and so where I would expect Apple to make an impact is by fielding a good hearing aid type device over the counter that sells into basically the low end of the market, because as high as it would be priced, it would still be priced way less than the TI-84 of hearing aids, right? Because they would sell it at Apple prices, which are still better than, totally lopsided market caused by your need to see a doctor and a limited number of devices that are approved, yada, yada, right? So I think even though they'd be selling things for more than the AirPods, I don't think Apple would ever come out with a $5,000 hearing aid. They would come out with a $500 one, and that would still be disruptive to the market, because that $500 one might have most or all of the features of the $5,000 ones that are there today. So still not sure Apple wants to get into this market, but I feel like they are right on the doorstep, and it's there, and it has a good synergy with their, watch and health strategy, and with the over-the-counter FDA clearances and everything. They don't need to commit too much to it. They can basically say, look, here's a device that we sell, and it has a bunch of functions that everybody can use, and also it can function as a pretty decent hearing aid, and it's the same hardware, and it's just a little bit of a change in software.
We are sponsored this week by Hover, domain names for what you're passionate about. Go to hover.com/ATP to learn more and get 10% off your first purchase. Now, who doesn't need a domain name? Nowadays, it feels like everyone needs them, and everyone has them, and it's important, therefore, that yours stands out. Hover has over 400 domain extensions to choose from to help you brand yourself online and find that perfect name. They have all sorts of the top-level domains you can pick from. One of the ones that they're really pushing lately is the .me TLD. .me is a unique extension to use for your portfolio to showcase who you are and what you do. So if you are ready to launch a portfolio, go get the .me extension at Hover. Otherwise, they have all sorts of other things, from the traditional, .com, .net, all the way to the fun new ones like .plumbing, .diamonds. And they're just a really great domain registrar. It's like there's no tricks, there's no shady upselling, no scammy add-ons. All the domains come with free WHOIS privacy, and it's super easy to use. I love their control panel. It's very nice and easy to use. It's beautifully designed. It respects you and your time. And the Hover Connect feature lets you set up popular web host on your domain with just a few simple clicks. And of course, if you want full advanced DNS control, they offer that as well. And if you need any help with any of this, their customer support is top-notch. I manage most of my domains now at Hover, and it's just so pleasant. It's easy to use. They make it easy on you to buy from them and to run your domains there. You want your domain registrar to really be easy. You want it to like do what you need to do and get out of the way, and that's what Hover does. So see for yourself at hover.com/ATP to learn more and get 10% off your first purchase. Hover, to get a domain name for what you're passionate about.
All right, moving on from AirPods Corner to MacBook Pro Corner. Is there more space between the keys in the new MacBook Pro?
I was trying to eyeball it last week, and I was like, I can't tell in these pictures. And I'm like, I'm looking at the actual, 2017 MacBook Pro that's sitting right on my desk, and then I'm looking at the picture, then I'm looking at my desk, and I'm looking at the picture, and it's like, I can't. That's what I was doing last week. If you hear me on that thing, I'm like, they look about the same, but someone did what I should have done. Which is take two images of the supposed image of the 16-inch and then the image of the 15-inch, put them on top of each other, and then make an animated GIF that switches from 15 to 16 and 15 to 16. You can see that link in the show notes. It is from a Mac Rumors tweet. And I have to say, I think the space between the keys is slightly bigger on the 16-inch.
I agree. I didn't think so when I saw the pictures individually, but once you see this GIF looping them back and forth, I think it is slightly increased spacing, which, again, I welcome because I think it needs that for accuracy.
This is like a millimeter, though.
It might be an optical illusion.
That's the thing, yeah. It could be a difference of, shading. And
yeah. Once Marco buys his, he needs to get some micrometers out and just, find out.
I will.
Yeah. I mean, the same way we discovered that the bottom row of keys shrunk when the Butterfly keyboard came out.
Exactly.
Stay tuned for America's favorite key measuring podcast. Oh, God.
And then more suggestions for inverted T arrow keys on the new MacBook Pro. People are starting to wonder, maybe we are getting the inverted T back. Why are we thinking that today?
This is back to that sort of iconic image that we talked about where they have a picture that shows you your model of computer that they use as sort of a big icon in various parts in the UI. And we talked about that, a couple episodes ago. And now there's a zoomed in sort of Zapruder version of this thing saying, look, if you compare the left lower edge of the keyboard on this icon to the right lower edge, it's clear that they're trying to indicate that that key that's in the right lower corner is not as wide as the left lower corner, which implies an inverted T. So yeah, again, I invite you to look at the picture that we will put in the show notes.
This is utterly preposterous.
I find it vaguely convincing. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
It took me a while to even see it.
Yeah, it's there. We also saw the picture. I think Marco poo-pooed this on Twitter. Someone actually posted a top view picture showing the inverted T clearly, but it wasn't.
Well, that was
it
fake.
Seem
that was it. Yeah.
Inauthentic. But this I feel like, and I have to say I didn't actually confirm this, but it's the type of thing. We have that image from Catalina that we could all go to our own Catalina machines and extract ourselves to confirm that, yeah, this really is an image from Catalina. And I'm assuming if you zoom in on it, you'll see exactly what they show in this picture. There's a pixel difference. There's one pixel difference. I'm willing to believe in the inverted T a little bit, maybe.
I hope so. This image is not so convincing that I want to get my hopes up about it. Mm-hmm. I really, really want there to be inverted T again. Between that and the key switch, going back to scissor, and the slightly smaller key widths, I think that would be amazing. But I just don't want to get my hopes up. We've been burned so many times by hoping for these laptops to get better, and then every year they just don't. That I'm afraid. I'm kind of gun shy to even get my hopes up about them getting better. This is stupid. I had a dream last night about these laptops, and I know people's dreams are stupid, but
were there more ports?
There were fewer ports.
Oh my God, this is a nightmare.
Yeah, there was one USB-C port and one A and one Kensington lock hole. That was it.
It was like your laptop, but it wasn't your laptop.
I would take one C and one A. Thank you very much. That is a dream for me.
This is how much I'm I have tension about these laptops coming out and being even worse or disappointing in some way. I hope they come out soon. I still think they will. I mean, again, these resources are in this build of the OS for a reason. They wouldn't put these resources in Catalina.1 if these machines weren't coming out till next year. So I still think they are imminent. And I just hope I just want it to come out so we can finally see it and finally like end this tension and get back to our usual expertise of complaining about whatever they didn't do.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny to me. I think it was David Hannemeyer Hansen had something go around the internet over the last week or two where he had tried a Windows machine, like a Surface something or other, for a week and decided he couldn't do it. And on the one side, I think it's really kind of preposterous that people are that upset about the keyboards that they're turning to an entirely different platform because they think that's better. But on the flip side of that, I think the reason people are so upset is because they are having considerably worse experiences than I am, because I have definitely had to blow out the keyboard on my MacBook over the last 2 or 3 years, whatever it's been. But I've never had yet a catastrophic failure like I think so many other people have. In fact, John, I believe you have now gotten to the point of catastrophic failure on yours. And it's just weird to me because my gut reaction is, oh my God, people, relax. It's not that, oh no, but it is that bad for them. Never mind.
Yeah, like as soon as it happens to you and you can't type on your keyboard anymore, it changes your perspective a little bit. Like again, we talked about this a million times. None of us know what the actual percentages are, but like the fact that there's really nothing to do except for be without my laptop. That's the whole reason I still have this on my laptop. Why don't you just bring it to work? It's not even yours. They'll fix it for you. But I don't want to be without my laptop. I don't want to have a loaner. I'm in the middle of a bunch of stuff. I don't want to have to like back up and restore a bunch of my files. Like it's a hassle. And so I'm just dealing with the hassle, and it's stupid. But like, I mean, DHH is doing it because like, well, whatever. What else does he have to do with this time? So he decided, and it's a good experiment to do. You got the disposable income and the time. Why not try Windows? See what else is out there, and didn't expect it to stick, and he didn't, and he ended up returning the thing. But it wasn't because of the keyboard that he returned it. So,
well, it's funny, like in a way, like Casey, you started that by saying that he was so fed up that he switched platforms. I've kind of done that too. I hate using my laptop so much, and it's almost entirely because of that keyboard, that I do almost all of my portable work now on my iPad instead. And I save things that I need a Mac for when I'm home. And when I went on a trip, I brought my iMac Pro instead of bringing a laptop.
Yeah, no, you make a good point.
Like I really don't like using it, and again, it's almost entirely because I just hate the keyboard feel, and so in a way, I have kind of switched platforms for my portable needs just to avoid using that stupid laptop, and so like that's not a small thing. Like there's a real collection of issues here that affect people in pretty substantial ways. So I just hope our long national nightmare will be over soon. Just I feel like we're so close. We're so close.
I hope so. I really do. But so what's going to happen when we have no more ports? Like even if the port situation stays the same, we have no more ports, but the keyboard got better. Is that enough for Marco? Are you going to finally stop complaining and moaning, or are you going to still whine about the ports?
The ports are inconvenient. The ports make me have to carry dongles. But if I have to carry dongles and the rest of it's fine, then I'll be happy with that.
Dongle's way less than your iMac Pro.
Yeah. Even the 100 that you need.
Well, and like, the ports, like that problem can be solved with some dongles. The keyboard can't. You can't avoid the keyboard. Like that's an unsolvable problem in that machine. So like it's a much worse problem. If you can get away with having 1 or 2 dongles or buying a few new cables and that's it, then yeah, that sucks and you're out a bit of money, but then the problem's solved, right? So I'd rather have that problem than have a keyboard that I just hate no matter what.
What will happen if we get 16-inch or whatever MacBook Pros? Let's not go completely hog wild. Let's not say they have any USB-A ports, but they have at least as many, if not more, USB-C ports, and they bring back your SD card reader.
I'd be on cloud 9. Like, look, I'm not expecting USB-A. I know I would love it because there are so many people in so many occasions where it's like, hey, just give me one USB-A port. I need it right this second. I don't have a dongle, right? Like that would be very helpful. I don't see them doing it for lots of reasons, whether it's physical, thickness reasons, or ideological reasons of not going backwards or whatever. Like that's fine. I'm not, honestly, I don't have any hopes for USB-A. I don't think it's going to happen.
Agreed.
The need for SD cards has not gone away, and like fewer people use standalone cameras, but a lot of people who buy Pros still do. A lot of the marketing images where Apple shows the ideal customer to buy these computers are people who use SD cards still. So I would say that like the need for that is still very much there. Now, if we're carrying dongles anyway, most of the like multi-dongle things have SD card readers built into them. So it's less of a need than it was because like we all have given up and given into this dongle world anyway. So ultimately, I would love an SD card slot, but I would classify it the same way I classify USB-A as just being pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
Now, having more USB-C ports, that I think would be wonderful. Again, I honestly, I think the ports are going to be exactly the same. I think we're going to have 4 USB-C ports on the thing.
As do I.
I don't think we're going to have and a headphone jack. God, I hope. But like, I'm not expecting any other changes to that because ultimately, I don't see. I see Apple like standing by that for lots of different, technical and ideological reasons, which is unfortunate because like, we still like these computers can still connect to fewer things than their predecessors could because we still end up wasting one port for power. And because if you use your laptop the way that like people in Apple's marketing for these laptops use them, you can't run on battery for very long. You can run on battery for maybe 90 minutes if you're doing what people are doing in the Apple commercials with these laptops. Like, so you need power most of the time. So then you're down to 3 ports, right? And like, it's just like these are basically 3-port laptops in practice, or if you get the lower end models, 1 or 0-port laptops. And so I just want more. Just give me more. And all the arguments for like, how great Thunderbolt 3 ports are seem so wasted when one of them is being used just for power most of the time. Like all that PCI Express bandwidth, all that expansion and capability. It's like, yeah, that's great, but I'm just plugging this in with this port. All it's doing is taking power. I don't need all that. So like there's a weird like engineering trade-off mismatch going on here. And so the more ports there are, the less bothersome that becomes. So just even if they went to 5, which was odds they might not, but like 6, great. Like just the more the better. And the lower end models, the 13 inches, like they should all have at least 4. Because you know what, that old 11-inch Air, that had a lot of ports on it.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't remember what the SD card slot was on the 2015, like what standard it supported or whatever. But there is actually an opportunity if Apple ever decided that they wanted to look back at SD cards to support whatever the giant alphabet soup standard is for the fastest of the fastest SD card standard. Do you happen to know what that is, Marco? Like UXHD?
Yeah, I think we're still on XC. Yeah, well, there's the UHS series. So we're on SD XC for like the capacity standards.
It's like Super Bowls.
I know
names.
And but like so there's the like faster generation of SD card slots that have the second row of pins on the back. But those are optional for readers. Like readers can read from both sets of pins at once and like do like a big parallel high bandwidth read, but they don't have to. So it's backwards compatible with everything. So like I believe the only computer that has that port so far in Apple's lineup is the iMac Pro. Oh yeah, right, because the new 15 inches don't have slots. Yeah, so the iMac Pro does have the super fast SD reader in it, and it's wonderful. I use it all the time. Whenever I don't miss and hit the vent instead.
Yeah, if you got those big, 41 or 62 megapixel or whatever they are images in the big Sony cameras, and you're filling up these giant SD cards, it takes forever. You're not going to do them over like Wi-Fi, and I guess supposed to work on USB-C, but then you're dealing with cables and that stupid flappy door that you open up to plug the cable into. SD card, take the card out, shove it in. Like it's more convenient, and if it's faster, all the better.
So what happens then if in the next couple of weeks we/Marco get the SD card equipped, cellular enabled 16-inch laptop, and then
cellular.
right after that, just shush. And then right after that, we get the Mac Pro, and suddenly Marco just wants to talk about the 16-inch laptop, doesn't really care about the Mac Pro anymore, and John just wants to talk about his Mac Pro. And then what do I get to decide what we talk about? Is that how this works?
Marco is going to mostly use his iMac, so even though he'll be excited if he got his fantasy laptop, then he'll just put it away, wait for his next trip, and continue to sit in front of his iMac all day. So don't worry about it.
Well, I think this problem will solve itself, because if they come out anywhere near the same time, the answer is I get to talk about the laptop first because John will waffle on.
Take me forever to buy one.
Yeah,
Yep.
John will waffle on his purchase. He'll be afraid to pull the trigger on a $15,000 purchase, and we'll waffle over it for at least a couple of weeks.
15. That's adorable.
And my computer will take forever to ship
Yep.
anyway, because it's not like they're going to be, raised, and then it'll take a while to sort of install, because unlike a laptop where you just open it up and just plop it on a table, like I have a lot of stuff to move and transfer data from, so don't worry.
Yeah, John's gonna have to rebuild his entire office from scratch to fit this computer into it somehow. So yeah, don't worry, it'll be a process.
I mean, it's the same size as my other one, but I do have to once you're I thought about this when I was looking at something on television or whatever, showing someone set up and looking at their cables. It's the thing I always do. I think about in my house where all my cables are. If you have a desktop computer that's been there for a long time and has a lot of peripherals, you kind of forget how many cables there are, because I've cleverly hidden them and routed them or whatever. Once you start pulling things out, then you just end up with this giant wad. You're like, wow, I couldn't believe how much of the stuff was back there. Exactly how many wires have to connect for all this stuff to work together. When it comes time to move it, especially if you're transferring data, I have to have them both connected for some period of time to transfer stuff, or I have to yank out hard drives from it or whatever.
Oh, forget it.
Then I have to get everything out. Then you got to vacuum behind there because of all the dust and the gross stuff. Then I got to install a new UPS and maybe get some new networking cables. It's once the walls are open,
Right, exactly.
You're going to take a sabbatical just so you can do your new computer upgrade.
Yeah, but it's not as bad as my TV. My TV is worse. I should take some pictures from behind my TV. It is not a neatly arranged set of cables. There, the stuff you can see is neat, but if you look behind there, I have 5 game consoles connected to my television, plus a receiver, and what else is there? The TiVo, and it's just there's too much stuff. And then all the wires going out to all the speakers. It's terrifying back there. Plus all the power bricks. Oh my God, the power bricks. It's bad.
It's not Stephen Hackett's way to be mean or nasty, but if he ever is mean or nasty, just send him that picture and he'll have nightmares for weeks.
Yeah, I'll send them the picture of the neat part where you can see where I have the 17 HDMI cables snaking down from my plasma television that used to have all those ports. I have all the optical cables, everything that you can plug into my things and my television are plugged in. I have Ethernet cables and everything. And there's an 8-port switch behind there as well with its own power brick. And there's a lot going on behind my TV.
I will admit something embarrassing. I actually, when I upgraded my switch in my house, I upgraded to a power over Ethernet switch that can send power over Ethernet over any of its ports. And I actually upgraded the sub switch that I keep in my TV entertainment center solely for the reason that I upgraded it to one that could be powered by power over Ethernet to save one power brick under my TV.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because I have the big, I don't have UPS behind my TV. I probably should, but I have a couple of big power strips connected to different outlets from each other. And I buy the biggest ones I can, the 12 outlet ones that are really far spread out because you need room for the stupid, bricks to not butt up against each other. I'm basically at capacity. If and when all this says when I replace my television, it's going to be worse because that's moving furniture and big heavy things, and I'm going to have to pare down on the consoles. My television supports component input, which is what my sort of analog era consoles are connected to because it's the best connection. I think my GameCube is connected to component. And all those ports are gone from modern TVs, so I just won't have those connected. I know I can buy adapters, but I'll just probably get to retire them. And so I'll pare things down substantially and hopefully get some space back. But
wait, so right now, so you have a GameCube connected and ready to go right now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! What other analog consoles do you?
The Wii the Wii's not HD, yeah. So that's my other one.
Oh my God! What? How often do you use the Wii?
Well, the Wii is actually my substitute GameCube, right? So because I have a Wii with GameCube compatibility, so if I want to play a GameCube game, I'm probably going to play it on the Wii, but occasionally I'll want to play it on the GameCube, or it'll already be.
So you effectively have 2 GameCubes connected to your TV right now.
Yeah, well, the Wii is also a Wii.
In 2019.
Yeah. Mostly they're just taking up space in my entertainment center at this point because I so rarely use them, right? But they take up space that's important for them to be there because they hide the wires that are behind them. You know what I mean? They look nice or whatever. But if I were to remove them, you'd be able to see through because my entertainment center thing is just this metal frame with glass shelves, it's not enclosed, which is good for airflow and everything, but bad if you're trying to hide a terrifying rat's nest of cables.
Does your TV have a RF input? I can send in my Sega Genesis.
Wow.
No, it does have composite input, I think, though, which is crazy for an HD TV. It's got component input for sure, because I have things plugged into that. It might have composite. I don't know.
All right, my final question, John. I'm looking at automobiles.honda.com. A 2020 Accord LX CVT, which I think is the cheapest Accord you can buy, is the MSRP is $23,870. What is the likelihood in your mind that your computer will be more or less expensive than, let's say, what is the likelihood it will be more expensive than this, including the display?
It will be less.
You think you will be spending less than $24,000 with the display?
I think so too. He can't make himself spend more than that. I'm guessing the display, you're going to spend the $7,000 on the good one, and I'm guessing the Mac Pro itself is going to be between 7 and 10. That's why I'm thinking between $14,000 and $17,000.
And don't forget all my finagling for discounts.
Yeah, I know, but
oh no, okay, but I'm talking about the
MSRP of whatever you buy.
Like cars, no one ever pays the full price. Anyway,
sure.
Considering the most expensive car I've ever purchased has been less than $25,000, the odds of me getting a computer that costs more than that is not that high.
Although you get more years out of your computers than you do out of your cars.
I use both for around 10 years.
The 2020 Civic Sedan LX CVT, $20,550. I think that's in the running. I really do.
It's close.
I would never spend $20,000 for a car with a CVT. Come on.
But you're missing my point. My point is simply that for the price of your Mac Pro, I think you will be able to get a
bad car that I wouldn't like.
A very bad car that you wouldn't like.
Yeah.
More than one.
Yeah, you can always get you can still find cars for $15,000 or whatever, just not Honda.
No, you can find no. My point is looking at Honda, which is your jam. What Honda could you buy new for the amount of money you're going to spend on your Mac Pro? So as another example, the 2019 Civic starts at just under $20,000. And I don't think you're going to get to $20,000 on your Mac Pro, but I think you're going to get uncomfortably close.
But even if I did, that's $2,000 a year. So that's like Marco buying a new computer every year, which he does. It's nothing. It's amortized over 10 years, right? So
yeah.
I haven't bought one this year.
You haven't?
You haven't bought any? You've bought zero computers.
My laptop is from last summer. Not this
You're
summer.
going to buy the 16-inch this year, though, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So there you go.
The moment it becomes available, I'm ordering it.
And it will not cost less than $2,000. So there we go.
That's also true.
We are sponsored this week by Away. For $20 off a suitcase, visit awaytravel.com/ATP20 and use promo code ATP20 during checkout. Because this season, everyone wants to get away. Now, Away makes really awesome, well-considered, well-designed luggage. They're most famous for their carry-ons. They considered all types of travelers and really put a lot of thought into their design, and they make their carry-on in 2 sizes with an optional ejectable battery. This is what made them famous, this battery thing, where you can have a battery that's built into your carry-on bag, so as you're rolling it around the airport, waiting at gates, going between flights, you can be charging your phone or any other USB device, so you never run out of battery power. And then if you have to, say, gate check your bag, you just pop it out. There's a one-click release mechanism there. You can pop the battery right out, and then you can carry it on board with you. And inside the bag, there's all sorts of great features too. They have an interior compression system that lets you pack more. They have a removable, washable laundry bag. And it's super easy to maneuver through airports because they have 4 360-degree spinner wheels for a nice, smooth, silent ride. On the outside, there's a TSA-approved combination lock. And all the materials here are top quality and guaranteed for life. They have their signature polycarbonate, a really strong, durable, lightweight material. They also, a few months back, added anodized aluminum. And they recently added an expandable line that has a fabric outside. These are all super nice premium materials, and they have a 100-day travel with it risk-free trial. So you can actually buy an Away suitcase to travel with, because of course, how else would you try it, right? If you don't like it within 100 days, you can return it. So check it out today and get $20 off a suitcase at awaytravel.com/ATP20 and using promo code ATP20 during checkout. Once again, awaytravel.com/ATP20, code ATP20 for $20 off a suitcase. Thank you so much to Away for sponsoring our show, because this season, everyone wants to get away.
James Stratford writes, this was with regard to somebody asking about why Time Machine does not use APFS. And James writes, another reason an APFS Time Machine rewrite may not be a priority is that APFS seems to be focused on SSDs, and few people would use expensive SSD storage for backup at this point, which I think that point in and of itself makes sense. But John, as our resident file system expert, What says you?
Yeah, I included it because it does make sense. But on the other hand, SSD prices have been going down a lot, and it's not like it used to be. I bet a surprising number of people are going to start using SSDs for backups when available. But yeah, APFS performance on spinning disks is crap. It was never, I mean, it works, but it was never designed for that. And so, I don't think it's the reason why they haven't done it. Like I said on the last show, they're working towards it in slow, steady increments. They're not sandbagging because they're like, oh, we got to wait for everyone to not have spinning disks. People back up to SSDs. Like, not everyone has terabytes and terabytes of data. And the great thing about SSDs is they're all bus powered in a nice, handy little case. So you don't, again, power bricks, the enemy of all, good people everywhere. And it's great to back up to an SSD because it doesn't take forever. So I highly endorse SSDs as backup drives. They're small, they're silent, and they're much less expensive than you might think, as long as you don't have tons and tons of data to back up.
Finally, we enter Letterboxd Corner. Can you tell me about the benefits of Letterboxd Pro?
Last week I said that you can pay for Letterboxd, but yeah, I didn't know if you got anything for paying for it. Well, apparently you do. I've always been paying for it, so I don't really know what it's like not to pay for it. But apparently, according to letterboxd.com/pro, you get personalized annual and all-time stats pages based on your diary entries. You can filter your favorite streaming services, basically tell it which ones you actually subscribe to. And you can filter activity by type, pin reviews to your profile, duplicate lists, change your username, and have cool background images on your profile pages and all sorts of other perk type things. So yes, you do get something for your money if that interests you. And related to that, I said in the last episode that I was using it kind of wrong because I just, every time I watch a movie, I would go in and I would give it a rating, and that would also mark it as watched. But what it wouldn't do is add a diary entry to record that I watch it. So at the end of the year, when they say, hey, check out your annual review of everything that you watched, and we'll show you these cool stats and graphs, I'd go and it'd say, you watched 0 films this year, which is not true. They want me, every time I watch a movie, to make a diary entry, which is like a couple more clicks. And I sent a feature request ages ago saying, don't make me do more clicks. If I go and rate a movie that I have never rated before, also add a diary entry that says, hey, you watched this. In addition to what they're doing. So they haven't added that feature, but one of the people from Letterboxd site told me you can, because we preserve the date when you watched it, like the date when the little watched Boolean bit flipped, you can export your data and then re-import it to make diary entries. And it pointed me to some export-import page, which I went to, but I figured, this will be a big pain in the butt. It's going to drop out these giant JSON blobs, and I'll have to transform them and make new blobs and write to an API and, sign up for a dev account and get an access token and make a little program. I'm not going to do that, but I just want to see what it looked like or whatever. And it turns out, as I wrote in the show notes, it's CSVZ, which I think should be their slogan. Their export is a CSV file. You go and you export, and it gives you a zip file with a bunch of CSV files, and the CSV files are dead simple. There's one for each type of thing. It's called diary.csv, watchlist.csv, and it's, CSV is the format that's not a format, as any programmer knows who's ever tried to deal with CSV files. But in this case, it was very straightforward. There's a little header to tell you what the fields are. I didn't even have to read any documentation. It was totally clear. And then I saw my diary, which had 0 entries, which was a little bit of a problem. All I needed to do, to reassure myself, and so I was sure that I didn't have to read documentation, is I added a diary entry and then re-exported my data so I'd have at least one line so I knew what the lines looked like. Because there was a bunch of fields, is that a Boolean? Do they want a Y and N? Is it T or F? Is it 1 or 0? So I made a diary entry, downloaded the file, saw what a diary entry looked like, and then I just, in BBEdit, just did select all, one, regex copy and replace thing, and just uploaded. The import step was I just uploaded the diary.csv file that I had now filled out with my hand-selected set of all of the movies. The point of the person from the site was telling me is just because you mark something as watched doesn't mean you watched at that moment, which is true. When I first signed up for the service, I went through this huge back catalog of movies saying, okay, I watched that one and I rated this. I rated literally 1,000 movies just sitting there just in one day, clicking, putting on ratings. It doesn't mean I watched them all that day, right? So I wouldn't want those to show up as diary entries, because then the first year I was on the service is you watched 1,000 movies this year, which is not true. So that, they would want to do that automatically, which is why I suggested they have a feature that says, do you want this feature on or off when you rate a movie? Should it mark as viewed? Anyway, since I had the CSV there, I could see, oh, look, 2013 when I signed up for the site, here's like 500 entries. Ignore all those that all happened on that one day. And then starting after like the first legit entry that's like 5 days later for me watching a movie, everything from that point on is a legit watch. So I use that as the contents of my diary.csv. So long story long, now on my Letterboxd page, every single movie I've watched has a diary entry. And I'm going to try to, from now on, actually add diary entries. Like the main reason I didn't do it before is because I didn't realize until the first year I had used the service that I was using it wrong. At that point, I didn't want to go back and do it. But let's be a lesson to anyone who's making a website or API. Really dead simple import and export is great for people who, I'm not even going to say for programmers. I didn't have to do any programming. I literally did all this in BBEdit with search and replace. It was so easy.
That is very cool, actually. I saw the entry in the show notes, and I couldn't tell if that was like deep sarcasm or not. But I'm actually pleased to hear this. That's very cool. All right, we should talk about Apple TV Plus. And I want to immediately point you to upgrade number 270 from this week, called The Toughest Compare, where Jason and Mike go through and talk about some of the Apple TV Plus shows. I would actually like to discuss a little bit about them. If you don't listen to Upgrade, they have a really great segment called, what is it, Downstream? Is that right?
Upstream.
Upstream, God, of course.
Why would it be called Downstream?
That made me, I really want that one back, but too late. Mark will fix it in edit, I swear.
Will I?
So anyway, they have a really great segment called Upstream, ladies and gentlemen, where they talk about TV-related news and so on and so forth. The whole episode is very good. You should check it out. But I wanted to talk a little bit about my Apple TV Plus experience over the last 48 hours when I finally started watching a little of Apple TV Plus. I have seen episode 1 of Morning Show, and I have seen episode 1 of For All Mankind. Marco, have you had the time to watch anything so far?
As usual, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, like I do plan to watch these shows, but I don't watch a ton of TV shows. Like I watch entire series when possible, and that doesn't leave a lot of time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't watch a ton of TV shows, but you're working your way through all of Cheers.
Yes. As I've mentioned before, the world of technology is very big, and like one show can't possibly cover all of technology. I like that Upgrade covers the whole like streaming and TV side of all these businesses very well, because it kind of means that we don't have to. Like they have it covered, and that's nice because honestly, like as Apple gets into all these different businesses, like we don't really cover the credit card business. Apple's now in the credit card business. We talked about it here, like we talked about it briefly, but we're not going to really make it a thing because that's not really what our show's about. And even though our show tries to encompass as much of Apple as we can, Apple's really big now. And they're in all these different areas that we have neither the time nor the expertise nor the will to cover in great detail most of the time. And so I think TV is going to end up being one of these areas. Like we're going to cover it about the same way we cover credit cards, which is very briefly, like when it first comes out, and then we're going to forget about it because ultimately more stuff is going to go on. Like they're going to release these laptops, they're going to release the Mac Pro, they're going to have new AirPods and new other stuff. Like we're going to talk about that stuff we're going to measure the keycaps with my calipers way more than we're going to end up talking about the details of like, oh, this series is pretty good, and they got this director, and it's like, because that's not really us.
Well, it's definitely not Marco, but I've got a whole other podcast where apparently all we do is talk about Apple TV. So
fair. John, what have you seen so far?
I have watched. I mean, so they did an interesting thing here with the episodes. They didn't do the Netflix thing where they dropped whole seasons, but they also didn't release a single episode. They released the first 3 episodes, I think, of all the shows. Right, the first 3 for Morning Show.
I think that's true.
For the big ones. Anyway, I watched the first 3 episodes of For All Mankind, and I watched the first 3 episodes of C, because that's all there are released of those 2 shows. I'm going to check out Dickinson. I might check out the Morning Show. I'm not sure it's up my alley. But that's my plan. But I did want to talk about and not in the sort of in the length that we go into unreconciled differences and on Upgrade and other shows, the actual application on various platforms through which we watch these shows. I had a tweet. I don't know. Well, I guess on November 1st when the thing came out, it was my only tweet about Apple TV Plus at that point, I think, and I basically said that I started watching a show. And then put down my iPad, and then later came back and picked up my iPad and wanted to resume watching the show. and the Apple TV app on the iPad was like, "What show? You weren't watching a show." Like, no, I swear I was. It didn't remember my playback position, and that's not a great first experience for the application. That was my whole tweet. It fit in a single tweet with a new longer tweet link. It's like I started watching a show, put down the iPad, picked it up without doing anything else, and it didn't let me resume. It got a lot of responses. Some people thinking I was implying that they don't have this feature. They do. Like, now that I've watched lots of shows in it, it does know how to resume where you left off sometimes. But really, like, I think there's an important perspective in this. Like, so the application, it has problems. Sometimes it doesn't keep track of where you kept left off. The UI is not great. The hierarchy of the UI is not great. I kept alluding to the show where I talk about Apple TV, the upcoming episode of Reconcilable Differences. We talk about this even more. Just sort of the standard set by the other streaming services of, like, when you launch them, the upper left corner is a giant square that shows you the show you were just watching with a little progress bar that shows you where you are. And if you want to pick up where you were, and when the show ends, there's a button to bring you to the next episode. And the next episode, they'll often skip the opening credits, or at the very least, they'll skip the recap because they know you just watched that episode. There's no reason for you to watch the recap right before the, basic sort of quality of life features of streaming apps that Apple is falling down on. And, despite the giant barrage of crazy, angry people yelling at me on Twitter because I dared say something bad about Apple's service, it is right to expect Apple to do these things, right? Like, but what I didn't say, I didn't really engage with anything this on Twitter because I wasn't interested in arguing with people about stuff. I was too busy watching TV shows, which brings me to my larger point, which is pretty much no matter how bad the app is and how many bugs it has, as long as it can actually deliver the video to your eyeballs without, like, crashing or stopping or whatever, like, as long as you can literally see the video, the thing that dominates all these other concerns about, the app and the UI, and I don't like how it didn't do this, and it wasn't easier for me to resume or whatever, is the shows. If the shows are good, people will tolerate an app that's buggy, a thing that doesn't pick up where it left off. Sometimes it doesn't offer to show you the next episode. Sometimes you have to hunt through the app. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, people dealt with terrible rabbit ear antennas and tinfoil and trying to get a good signal and terrible cable boxes with really bad remotes. Like, people will tolerate almost any bad UI if what you give them is good content. So my context for our, whatever discussion we're about to have about the actual content of the shows is that despite the fact that I'm disappointed in the quality and features available in Apple's applications for watching the shows, it matters to me, and it matters big picture-wise to the world at large, so much less than the actual TV shows. That's what matters in this context. Like, I know we're so used to talking about Apple in the context of, like, what's their hardware, what's their UI like, because that was the whole product pitch, but this is a fundamentally different business. This is the entertainment business, and while those things matter, the various, quality of the UI and the hardware and software, blah, 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 the thing that dominates is how good are the TV shows? No one talks about movies in terms of, like, I love that movie, but, like, the seats in the theater that I saw it in were a little bit uncomfortable. It was a bad UI, right? But that's, the Oscars aren't docked because the seats were bad. I know it's a bad analogy, but anyway, that's not what matters in this case, which is frustrating because we want the apps to be good and up to the standards that we expect from, a company that's supposedly good at this. And as I think they talked about an upgrade, it's fairly surprising to see that the worst aspect of Apple TV's launch is actually the stuff that Apple is supposed to be good at, like hardware and software applications. But really, all that matters is the shows. So I think that's what we should talk about.
Agreed. I went into this having heard a little bit about Morning Show and even less about For All Mankind. I'm going to do my darndest to try to do this spoiler-free. Additionally, on Upgrade, they were spoiler-free, and I have not yet listened, but on Liftoff number 111, Jason and Steven talk about For All Mankind, Liftoff being their space podcast. That's a pretty good place to talk about it. My understanding is that was also spoiler-free, so I'm going to do my darndest not to have any spoilers. I went into episode 1 of Morning Show knowing a bit about the premise, and I didn't think I would really like it. There was nothing about the premise that really spoke to me, but given the cast and given I thought, Aaron might like that one, we watched the first episode together. I think we both liked it a fair bit. She might have liked it a bit more than me, but I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I was very intrigued by it. It was immediately apparent that they were establishing ground rules for what an Apple TV show would be, in that there were swear words within the first 30 seconds or something like that, which for me, and I tend to use the F word as a comma when left to my own devices, I didn't have any particular problem with that. But if you recall, months ago, people were saying, oh, it's going to be family friendly and it's going to be almost Disney-like, and it is not almost Disney-like. Not a bit. I have also heard that C is extremely graphic. I have not seen it yet, but I've heard that is very, very, very graphic, to the point of making Mike a little bit uncomfortable. And Mike isn't a clutch the pearls kind of person, generally speaking.
He's just uncomfortable with female sexuality. That's all.
Oh my God, I'm not touching that one. Moving on, Mike, you can send your angry emails to John. Moving on, I thought the show was good. I thought the cast was great. It was a relatively interesting premise. The most interesting thing to me was when they went on a bit of a diatribe about how broadcast TV is dying because of streaming services, as they're doing this television program on a streaming service, which I thought was quite funny. But all told, it was pretty obvious to see where the plot was going. I thought, in a way that I did not feel that was the case with For All Mankind. But on Morning Show, I felt like it was pretty obvious to see where the plot was going through episode 1 anyway. But I really enjoyed it quite a bit, and I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed it. John, what were your kind of quick thoughts on it?
So I watched For All Mankind first because it was the show that I had the most interest in, both based on the premise and also the people behind it. I talked more about all these shows, Unreconcilable Differences, in a spoiler-free way. I'm going to talk in a spoiler-free way here as well, maybe in a more abbreviated form. I thought it was fine. I still like the premise. I'm still watching the show. I'm still interested in it. It didn't blow me away with its writing or acting. The special effects budget should have been bigger for a show about space. They should have. I know it's not the same pool of money, or maybe it is, but the money they spent on C, you see it up there on the screen. The money they didn't spend on the show about space stuff, you also see it up on the screen, which is kind of disappointing. But it's a TV show. I don't mind too much. It's kind of like Marvel movies, maybe to a lesser degree. The big thing about Marvel movies is it seemed to me that aside from a few real outliers early on, the Marvel machine that makes these movies has mostly found a way to make sure they don't make a terrible movie. Again, Thor 2, whatever, say whatever you want, right? But in general, they made a lot of movies. And it's amazing that they made that many movies that are, for the most part, okay to good. There's no part of them that's embarrassingly bad. There's no, boy, I can't even believe they made this one, or this scene is a real clunker, or they should have got a better star for this movie. In general, there is, the floor is high. They won't allow, the machine will not allow them to put out just an actively bad movie anymore, right? And so, watching For All Mankind, I'm like, this is not a bad show. It's not, it's not particularly innovative and daring. The writing isn't super smart. The premise is interesting. The actors are good, but not too good. It's fine. It's okay. It's good. I'm enjoying it, but it doesn't have that extra special something, which I read a big article by somebody, I wish I could remember who, but a seasoned TV critic was saying, look, when somebody comes out who's never made TV before, ever, Apple has never made television shows before, aside from, Carpool Karaoke and all, whatever, for their first thing, you can't expect, and they put out maybe 4 or 5 big shows, 0 of those are going to be Game of Thrones. 0 of those are going to be Breaking Bad. 0 of them are going to be The Sopranos. They're not going to get half of them or 2. They're going to get 0. You don't come out of the gate with Breaking Bad. It's our first try, and 1 out of our 4 shows is one of the greatest shows ever. It's just not going to happen. And I mean, it was a chance they could have. They had the right pedigree, but expecting that is unrealistic, right? Instead, as far as I can tell, based on the 2 shows that I watched, Apple has fielded shows that are not bad, which is important. A lot of the early reviews, oh, these shows are awful. And I spent some time on Rectifs talking to Merlin about the critics' ratings or whatever, on Rotten Tomatoes, and that was early on because I'm sure the numbers have changed a little bit. But For All Mankind is not a bad show. It is a good show. You should check it out. It's got an interesting premise, and I would recommend it for most people to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually would... I agree in general, but I actually enjoyed For All Mankind quite a bit more than I expected. I went into For All Mankind thinking, I'm going to like this. And I really liked it. I was surprised how much I liked it. And even knowing the premise of it up front, I felt like it took some twists and turns that I didn't expect. And they weren't dramatic twists and turns, but the ending of the first episode was not exactly what I expected. I can't be any more specific than that because I don't want to spoil it. But I thought it was really good. I thought the way they handled the line between the real past and their invented past, I thought they handled that well. I agree the acting and the writing were good but not great. But all told, it was a premise that I already found interesting just having heard about it, and having watched only one episode so far, it was far more interesting than I expected, and I really, really like it so far. And I like it so much, in fact, that Erin and I were talking about it, and she said, in so many words, well, why didn't you think I would like that? And then I thought about it, and I don't know, why didn't I think you would like that? like we should watch this together, watch the first episode together, for me a second time, for her the first, and then watch For All Mankind together. So far, of the two shows that I've tried, and admittedly, I've only tried one episode each, I think the two of us are probably going to watch both of these shows. And I expect it to be like, about both of them. So I was quite surprised. Now, with all that said, please feel free to comment on that or just tell me about C, because I know almost nothing about it.
Yeah, I think if you continue watching For All Mankind, it'll just, if you like the first episode, you'll continue to like what they have on offer there. And I think part of what Apple has done that's smart is with at least C and For All Mankind is they've chosen shows with interesting premises. Like the pitch, if you see that someone was to give you the pitch, you're like, oh, that sounds like an interesting idea. You could make a good show out of that, right? Whereas like they're not starting from zero. Because like it's much harder to say, for example, Deadwood. If you give the pitch for Deadwood, it's like, well, it's the Old West. Well, that pitch is not showing me anything. You could implement it in a okay way and have a boring show about the Old West. If you are, really good and you could get something like Deadwood. But just based on the pitch, you're like, well, you're basically starting from the ground floor here. Everything you build, you're going to have to build yourself. I'm sure it's possible to make a Deadwood quality show out of this Old West premise, but it's also possible to make a crap show out of this premise because the premise is not helping you at all. The premise on For All Mankind and C, already you've got a leg up. You're like, you've already got the people's attention. As long as you're vaguely competent, you can build on that to go somewhere. And I think that was smart, because if they chose to just make a show about mobsters or a show in the Old West, it's very easy to be like, oh, I've seen a million mobster shows. Why would I even watch this? You have to make The Sopranos to get people interested. Otherwise, you might end up with, like, say, Boardwalk Empire, which was a show that I enjoyed, but it was not The Sopranos. But both of those pitches are similar. It's like, hey, organized crime in insert era here, right? Arguably, Boardwalk Empire was more interesting because it wasn't set in modern day. Anyway, so that was smart, and I think For All Mankind is handily above the average for all Netflix original material. It's not as good as the best Netflix has made, but it's much better than the average, I feel like, because I watch a lot of, like, questionable quality Netflix stuff that, Netflix puts out a lot of things, and they're smart and they're savvy and they try not to spend too much money, and they, I do searches for various keywords and find a bunch of shows, and you're like, I can't even believe all this stuff exists, and I try them out, and some of them are stinkers and some of them aren't. But For All Mankind is above average. That's why I feel like it deserves a higher visual effects budget. C, similarly, it's got a premise where already it's starting for you got my interest before even the first frame airs, because I'm like, oh, I want to see what they're going to do with this premise. Like the maturity thing of sort of people thinking, oh, they're not going to curse and they're going to Disneyfy or whatever thing. Yeah, C does have a couple of scenes of violence and some, sexual content that clearly, like, it makes it very clear that story about, oh, Tim Cook's telling me I can't have, adult things in my shows was, as suspected in various ways, probably partially motivated by someone who's disgruntled about creative direction in a particular show or whatever. But that said, C does not even rise to the level of HBO sort of adult content. in that the sexual content is really tame in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's nothing explicitly shown or anything like that. The violence is, it's personal violence, but it is not particularly gory or grim. Like, to give just one example, The Boys on Amazon, which I thought was an interesting show, is so much more over the top with its gore. Like, it's totally in your face and trying to shock you with the gore. C is not trying to shock you with the gore. It's not trying to shock you with the sex for the most part. Again, unless you're very uncomfortable with female sexuality, it's fine. Like, it is. I'm not going to say it's Disney-ified, but it is all. That's not what C is about. C is not, even to the degree of like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad had various moments where like they're going to sort of horrify you with this thing that happens, and they're really going to show you what it would really be like if that happens, not just like the sanitized TV version of it, right? C doesn't do that either. So don't watch it with your kids, obviously, but don't expect to be shocked by anything. I feel like C, there's a lot of money on the screen. It doesn't really hold together, premise-wise. If you think about it for too long, there's lots of sort of hand-wavy stuff, but the premise is interesting. I love end-of-the-world stories, and so I'm totally willing to go along with it. I feel like the star, Aquaman, what's his name? Jason Momoa or something?
Yeah.
He may be a little bit overmatched by the acting required of him to carry this series, but mostly he just has to be a sort of brooding lunkhead, so it's kind of in his wheelhouse. It's like, again, I don't want to say it's bad. Like, the ratings that this got from critics, like, I think it was like 38% on Rotten Tomatoes for the critics rating. That is wrong. It is not that bad. It is absolutely not a 38% show by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a 90% show either. It's fine. I like For All Mankind better, but I'm still very interested in C because you should see the garbage shows on Netflix that I've watched about the end of the world. This is so much better than them. Like, I have a high tolerance for garbage shows when it's about the end of the world. That's just me. But I would recommend C to people who find the premise interesting. Because if you hear about what the show's about and you're like, oh, that sounds kind of cool, you'll probably like it. Okay, good. It's not great, but it's also not bad. So this sounds terrible, like these tepid reviews. And again, I go back to that TV critic saying you can't expect, when they field like 4 or 5 shows, for any of them to be on par with like the best shows on television in the past few years. And I think it's good that none of them, as far as I can tell, are awful. You saw The Morning Show and didn't think it was awful, and that actually got some okay, good reviews. And I saw C and For All Mankind, and they're not bad shows. It sounds so terrible to not be able to say this is the best show ever. None of them are the best show ever, but it is really important for Apple to come out of the gate, especially in this free, where it's like free to everyone who bought an iPhone for a year or whatever, to get people to watch it and not like turn it off in disgust or be like, oh, Apple can't make TV shows or they really blew it. I don't think anyone watching is going to say that. I think what they'll say is, well, I got it for free. Maybe I'll watch it, and they'll get interested, and it starts moving along, and you watch it. Maybe by the end of the first season, people are like, you know what? I really enjoyed that. I'll pay for it for the next year or whatever. So I think content-wise, this is about as good as anyone could have expected. You could still be out there saying, oh, if only they had that one great show. But I just think that was an unrealistic hope. And any of these shows could turn into a great show. It sometimes takes shows a little while to get their feet under them. So I'm mostly impressed for a first-time TV maker to come out with a bunch of shows that are okay, good.
I agree with you. I've been... Granted, I've watched a sum total of like 2 hours and 15 minutes of Apple TV Plus, but I have been very, very surprised and very pleased with it so far. Can you tell me about the streaming quality? I watched For All Mankind on my phone in a fit of insomnia this morning. Please don't yell at me. And then I had watched The Morning Show on my very old 1080 TV. But I would assume for those of us like you guys that have fancier TVs and fancier Apple TVs and so on and so forth, that it probably looks pretty good.
So this is Flat Panels HD, which is a website, and this is the editor-in-chief writing in their forums. He says, Apple TV Plus has the highest streaming quality we've seen for 4K so far. It's higher than most iTunes movies.
Wow.
Apple TV Plus uses variable bitrate with quite a wide span. The highest bit rate they've seen so far is 29 megabit per second average with a 41 megabit per second peak. I've also seen reports saying, oh, I watched a bunch of Apple TV content in HDR on my TV and there was terrible compression and banding. So it seems like the answer to the streaming quality is that Apple has the capacity to and will send you many more bits than other services will, but if your connection is slow or inconsistent or has any problems, they will, of course, throttle down and you will see compression artifacts. So it's the advantage of getting something from iTunes or watching on a Blu-ray disc is you've got all the bits there and you're going to see all the bits. Doing anything over streaming, if there's any hiccup in your connection or you actually have a bad connection or you have flaky Wi-Fi in the room you're in or whatever, it's just going to throttle down and the quality is going to go down. But it's good to know that Apple is leaning on this one, potential technical advantage they have is they're willing to send you more bits because they have fewer subscribers and, in general, they've always cared about video quality. But you're not going to see nice, pristine video if you can't sustain 29 megabit per second average to your television. It doesn't mean like, well, my internet connection is 150 megabits or 300 megabits. I should get that. Yeah, is your connection to your TV able to handle 29 megabits per second sustained? And then, of course, there's server issues and CDN issues and all sorts of other technical things that are outside your control. But I watch most of these shows on my iPad. I watch a surprising amount of TV on my iPad. It's making me more and more wish for an OLED iPad, actually. Just because, like, I end up watching, like, a show before I go to bed, and, the lights are all out and I've got my AirPods in. Like, this is my TV, my right before bed TV watching experience. And I like it. I like watching TV like that. I haven't noticed any. I can say I haven't noticed any terrible compression artifacts, so I guess that's thumbs up. Again, kind of like the shows. I didn't see anything bad, right? I also haven't noticed their quality being particularly great either. But then again, all my internet connections and all my Wi-Fi is very high bandwidth, and a lot of the shows I watch are actually streaming from my TiVo in the other room, and so there's no streaming issues there. Or I'm watching stuff off my Plex where I know I'm getting all the bits because I do it in original quality because I have good network in my house. So I think the audio video is fine, but of course for any streaming service, you never know what you're going to get.
Anything else on Apple TV Plus?
I mean, I know I said I didn't want to harp on the application issues and that the quality of the shows is the dominant factor. That's true, but I really do hope they get this stuff sorted out. Like, for all the world, it felt like they were having weird server issues. A couple of people thought that maybe it was also the background process termination stuff. Like, maybe their app was getting killed before it could send an API request to mark my position in the show. But honestly, like, I don't want to repeat the rant that I went into on Rectus. Like, this is table stakes for the app. Like, you can either innovate and say we have a great idea of how to present an interface to television, but if you don't have any great ideas, just do what Netflix does. Like, when I launched the app, you absolutely have to show me in a gigantic box that I can just paw at with my monkey paws and just say, look, just continue showing me the thing that I was watching. If I was watching a show and I finished episode, show me the next episode. If I'm in the middle of an episode, pick up where I left off. I should never have to search for that. They also could do with a concept like Netflix's My List or some other way to say, these are the shows that I intend to be watching right now. Every streaming app has some way for you to do that. They're all different, which kind of sucks. But like, obviously once you start watching a show, you expect the app to understand that you're watching it. But also you could say, oh, and I would have liked to have gone in and say, okay, I plan to watch For All Mankind, C, and Dickinson. Right, and they'll think about the morning show. And then I should have had some page somewhere that shows all three of those shows, and I should be able to go into them and see all the episodes and see how far along I am in them. And then when I get to the end of the episode, it should go to the next one or prompt me to go to the next one. Like, it should just do all the things. And it's kind of boggles my mind that they dropped the ball on that. Some of it are bugs, and some of it is just that's not how they organize things. They don't have these features. They don't conceptualize it the same way as Netflix. And I'm not saying they have to do what Netflix and Hulu and everybody else does, but if they don't, they got to do something better. So right now they're doing neither. They're doing something worse, or they're trying to do the same thing but doing it with bugs. So it's not that big a deal because I eventually figure out how to get the show to play, but it just seems like it's not a high bar. We're not asking them for amazing AI features that think about what I'm going to do. It's just if I was just watching a show, like, I'm probably going to want to continue watching it. So that should be like the biggest, perhaps the only thing on the screen when I launch the app.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment, and I think they talked about this on Upgrade as well. It was surprising to me that there was no obvious, here's the Apple TV Plus stuff, or at least not on the Apple TV app anyway. There's so many the same name. So on the device called Apple TV, I was in the TV app, and there was no obvious place for Apple TV Plus content. And I was able to find it pretty quickly. Like, it wasn't a egregious amount of effort to go find it. But, that was the one time when it would have been nice for them to kind of highlight, this is the Apple TV Plus stuff right here. Look here, over here. Hey, over here.
And it's on launch day. You would think it would be so in your face that you wouldn't be able to avoid it. Like, and you end up looking for it. Like, how am I hunting for this? How is this not like a giant banner in my face that I can't even avoid?
Yeah. But I do, on the flip side of the coin, though, I do respect that they're trying to, or it appears anyway, that they're trying to make a level playing field for all of the content in that app. Which
is a charitable interpretation, yes.
Well,
of their bad information architecture. They're just trying to be fair to the other services that didn't launch today.
Well, you never know. I'm trying to get the benefit of the doubt. But no, all in all, I'm quite pleased.
One more aesthetic thing. So, Netflix, if you watch Netflix, they have kind of a splash screen. They recently changed it to this terrible thing with a bunch of colored lines. But like the thing that says like Netflix or the HBO like bong and hilariously compression defeating static, right? The sort of the thing that shows you what service you're watching. And so I was actually curious of what Apple was going to do here, if they were going to do anything like that. They do a twofer, right? So they've got a Netflix style splash screen that says Apple TV Plus. And then they also have, before the shows, it says like, I think maybe Netflix does this too, but it says an Apple Original or an Apple Original Film or something like that. And both of those things, also surprising for Apple, like the first one, the sort of Apple TV Plus splash thing, is very what I would expect a company that's not Apple to do. It looks like every other sort of production logo thing, where it's like shiny and backlit and the plus is glowy and there's a little THX type cord bong. Like it's a little bit like the startup chime for a Mac, but it's a little bit different. It's like, it's all the things that you would expect that to be. And that I feel like is a missed opportunity to do what only Apple could do, which is have no writing on the screen and just have an Apple logo. If Steve Jobs were still alive, we love doing those things. That would have been just an Apple logo. Like probably not even any sound or maybe some sound, but like, they're the only company, one of the few companies in the world that can literally put no text on the screen, put a one simple outline logo in a single color, and everybody knows what they're in for. But they didn't. They went with the whole Apple TV Plus, glowy plus, blah, blah. And then an Apple Original thing, the text and the font they used, like it looks like it would fit in Apple marketing material. It does not look like it fits in the front of a television program. So I feel like both of those things, I was surprised by the aesthetic choices. The aesthetic choices in the case of the logo seem very conventional, and in the case of an Apple Original seem kind of meh. So they had time to change it. Netflix, like I said, just changed their logo. I think it used to be like their regular logo. Now it's this weird animation with a bunch of colored lines and stuff that I think is worse. HBO is stubbornly sticking to their static despite how horrific it looks on the streaming services. So maybe in year 3. Someone will have an epiphany and say, you know what? We should just show the Apple logo. We'll stick with the startup bong. That's fine. It's kind of cute and everything, but just show the Apple logo. You don't need to say Apple TV Plus. It's not a great name. It's not a great logo. It doesn't need to glow.
We are sponsored this week by Eero, the Wi-Fi your home deserves. Now, home Wi-Fi, you would think it would be really easy, but until recently, it really hasn't been. You could always get Wi-Fi coverage in most of the house most of the time, but there are always dead zones or slow spots or like that one bedroom that you just couldn't really get Wi-Fi in at night. Eero fixes that. It's really, really great. It's a super easy to use system. There's an all-new Eero now starting at just $99. It blankets your entire home with fast, reliable Wi-Fi, eliminating poor coverage zones, dead spots, slow buffering on videos. You just have a consistently strong Wi-Fi signal wherever you need it in your entire house. And Eero sets up super easily in just a couple of minutes. You plug it right into your modem or your modem router box, and you manage it from their super easy-to-use, nicely designed app. The app lets you do all sorts of things from the setup to wonderful features like you can pause the Wi-Fi for dinner. You can get alerts if new devices join your network. And it's just super easy to use, and you get amazing coverage. So no more, buffering in the bedroom while you're watching videos. No more worrying that like your IoT devices that are like at the edges of your house won't get signal. it's there for you. I've used Eero myself. I mentioned a couple months ago that I was in a vacation rental and the Wi-Fi was terrible, and so I overnighted myself an Eero setup and I plugged it in right over theirs, and it fixed the problems. It was amazing. So you can fix your Wi-Fi problems too. You can fix it actually as soon as tomorrow, because if you go to Eero.com/ATP, enter offer code ATP at checkout, you can get free overnight shipping with your order within US and Canada. So once again, Eero.com/ATP, that's EERO.com/ATP, code ATP at checkout to get your Eero delivered with free overnight shipping. You must use this URL to receive this offer, Eero.com/ATP, code ATP. Thank you so much to Eero for sponsoring our show.
All right, let's move on to Ask ATP, and we begin with Josh Hattersley, who writes, you often mention that Apple's mobile system on chip are faster than Mac components using Geekbench. I just totally butchered that. How can I rephrase this?
You tried to substitute words on the fly, and you overflowed your own buffer.
I did. That is 1,000% an accurate description of what just happened. Now you're going to leave it in the show, though, because that was funny.
Yep.
All right, I'll just read this verbatim, and we can blame other people. You often mention Apple's mobile SoCs being faster than Mac parts in Geekbench, but is there much evidence that it's a good metric when comparing across architectures, for example, ARM versus x86? It's difficult to find concrete info here, but in theory, it isn't apples to apples, is it?
I'm kind of sad that today's geek children didn't get to experience what was a staple of my sort of early adult geek life, which was other geeks arguing with each other over benchmarks. Like back in the times when it was, 68K versus PowerPC, x86 versus 68K versus PowerPC, RISC versus CISC, AltiVec versus MMX. Like, this is a whole subculture of comparing platforms and arguing about which CPUs are better than what. And of course, when it came time to argue about that, it was like everyone would pull out the benchmarks. And then it just became a meta argument about, well, that benchmark is not realistic. It's not representative. That benchmark unfairly favors this particular architecture, and no real application does that. And it went on forever, like just arguing about the quality of benchmarks and how representative they were, and if it's artificial, and trying real world applications, and just trying, it never ended, right? But it meant that everyone was well versed in the pluses and minuses of benchmarks. And in this more modern sort of post iPhone era, people throw out Geekbench numbers, and no one ever argues about how applicable Geekbench or Spec or any of these other things are. No one ever says, "Oh, that doesn't count because that whole benchmark fits in the cache." Like, no one ever talks about this stuff anymore. It's just not an issue. So I'm going to say, this is why I give all this sort of reflexive hemming and hawing every time we mention Geekbench, and no one seems to care about my hemming and hawing, and they just, I never get any comments about it. I'm hemming and hawing because all benchmarks inherently are synthetic and non-representative in one way or another. But all that said, from all the years you're arguing about how fair or unfair a particular benchmark is to a particular PowerPC or a particular Pentium or whatever, the upshot is that in general, these benchmarks that are not made by someone who makes a CPU chip, like, Intel didn't make the benchmark, AMD didn't make the benchmark, right? These benchmarks are trying to be fair, and chips come and go, and the benchmarks more or less stay the same. So it's not like the benchmark even can be or is tweaked to be particularly favorable to one CPU or another. It doesn't mean they're not vulnerable to edge cases where, we've been running this benchmark for years and CPU cache sizes kept getting bigger, and all of a sudden we cross some threshold and now the entire, this particular entire benchmark fits in the cache and it goes like 10 times faster, and that's not representative of real world stuff. Like, so it's up to the Geekbench people to keep track of that. But in general, all those caveats aside, I'm going to say that Geekbench, though it is not representative of any particular real-world application or your particular application, I'm not aware of any ARM versus x86 biases that would explain the massive performance differences we see between, like, let's say, Apple's phone and all of the Macs that they have ever sold in their entire lives. Yeah, you can quibble over the details, but I think... I don't think that the benchmark is so unfairly biased that you should discount it. In general, you should give yourself some 5% margin one way or the other. So if they look like they're close to each other, it's probably about a wash. But I, for the most part, trust that they're an okay way to look at things.
Moving on, Glyn07 writes, can Marco give an update on the state of podcast market share? Is the equilibrium holding, or is Spotify taking over the world?
So it's hard to have an idea of, like, how do you measure podcast market share? Whose data do you use? whose data is valid. The best data that I know of that is publicly shared is Libsyn's numbers. I've mentioned this before. They do a show called The Feed that's kind of about podcasting and like helping people podcasting questions and everything. And every couple episodes of The Feed, they will do a stats breakdown of Libsyn's global stats for all shows hosted by Libsyn for a certain month. And they'll do geography breakdowns, like which countries had the most downloads. They'll also do like type of device breakdowns and app breakdowns. It isn't like the most perfect measure in the world because there's a whole lot of like really big shows that aren't hosted on Libsyn. So it's not like a perfectly representative sample, but it's such a huge podcast host in general that I think it's the best data we have that's publicly shared. So anyway, based on what they have reported, we're kind of in equilibrium for the most part. Spotify is taking significant market share. I think they're up to something like 13% in the latest numbers. But it's mostly additive. It has been mostly people who were not taken away from other apps. Like people aren't leaving Apple Podcasts and Overcast, etc., in droves to go to Spotify to listen to podcasts. Instead, Spotify's existing audience is starting to listen to podcasts for the first time, adding to the market rather than taking away from other apps. They are big, but they're also, because they're not really taking away from the rest of us, it's not as much of an issue. And also, from what I understand, their market share is not like an average slice. It is not like an even slice out of the rest of the market or in addition to the rest of the market. It's like certain demographics are very strong there and certain ones are totally missing. In the worlds that I tend to play in like nerds and tech podcasts, Spotify is basically nothing. Like almost no one listens to shows like ours on Spotify. And almost none of the users of my app would be at risk of turning into Spotify users instead. So it doesn't really affect our corner of the internet here, but it still is a good deal of market share.
What about things like Luminary or whatever, those various pay services for podcasts? Those wouldn't show up on Libsyn stats or whatever, but
they do. Luminary shows up as Libsyn stats of having something along the lines of 0.2% market share. So I'm not so worried about it. As a point of comparison, Overcast hovers around 3%.
What was that? Wasn't there some other pay service?
There's Stitcher Premium and a couple others. Audible has some originals, but I don't know how they do. Stitcher does okay in general. I don't know how Stitcher Premium specifically does, but Stitcher is somewhere in the 2% range most of the time, I think.
Well, that's mostly good news, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like things are pretty stable. Spotify is growing. That is significant, but we're fine. Like, we're not really being touched by that in our kind of corner of the internet over here. And so I think things are mostly holding pretty well.
Good.
And the premium services sounds like they haven't. No premium services even gotten the traction that Spotify's gotten.
Not even close. No. I mean, you could argue maybe Spotify is a premium service in some ways, but they own Gimlet now. They do have a paid tier, and they do have exclusive content. So like in some ways they are a premium service, but not in the way that most people would discuss premium podcasting services.
And that wouldn't show up, and you can't pull that out of the 13% because you have no idea what percentage of that is their premium stuff versus which is just people listening to regular podcasts on Spotify.
Right. All we know from this 13% is that is among Libsyn hosted podcasts, which are public podcasts. Among Libsyn hosted podcasts, Spotify is about 13% of their downloads.
Finally, Paul Donahue writes, I do some very basic database and Excel work for a living, but I've been thinking about learning how to develop apps on the side for supplemental income. Since I want to force myself to be at my desk, I've been thinking about getting a Mac Mini, but it hasn't been updated since last year. Do you think I should wait until it gets refreshed, or would I be fine purchasing it now? This is such a difficult question because up until there's a lot of smoke about something like, a 16-inch MacBook Pro, it seems like just about any time is a perfectly fine time to upgrade. But when you wait as long as the Mac Mini has been, because it's been about a year, right, since it's been upgraded, like
it has
Paul
been
said,
almost exactly a year, a little bit more.
Yeah, so then I get to be a little nervous about recommending an upgrade. I would say especially if you don't have a Mac already, just pull the trigger. It'll be fine. Maybe get it refurbished so you feel less bad if a new one comes out tomorrow. But I would personally say pull the trigger. Marco, what's your 2 cents on this?
Normally, I would say an Apple product that is a year old, you should probably wait. It's going to be updated soon. Not with the Mac Mini.
Fair play.
I think it would be a miracle if the Mac Mini were updated after only 1 year. It has never, if it could ever be said to have had a prime, which I don't think it ever did, but even in its prime, if it ever existed, it was never updated that frequently. So for the Mac Mini, only being a year old is actually kind of, young still. It's still a, what is the expression, like a spring chicken or something? I don't know. It's very, very new still for the Mac Mini. So I would say if you're going to get a Mac Mini, go ahead and get it now. You have a very low risk of it being updated anytime soon. That being said, there is the question of whether a Mac Mini is really the best choice here.
Fair point.
And that's a more complicated question about what Paul's needs are, what any potential other priorities might be, things like price or having certain equipment around. Paul says, I want to force myself to be at my desk. But I would say a decently spec'd Mac Mini is not that differently priced than an iMac, and an iMac is kind of a better computer in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So I would certainly I would urge Paul to consider an iMac. Otherwise, Mac Mini is fine, and it's not at risk of being updated.
I agree with Marco. Don't wait around for a Mac Mini. Just buy if you want one, buy it, but consider an iMac.
Thanks to our sponsors this week, Hover, Eero, and Away. And we will talk to you next week.
Now the show is over. They didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research. Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
Did I tell you guys I blew my first tire?
Yeah, we saw the pictures.
Yeah,
and we saw the tire of shame. Tell the tire of shame story. That's the best part.
This is pretty good.
The wheel of shame. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I was taking a left turn onto a road with a median. I took it slightly too tight and hit my rear left tire on the median on the inside, and instantly heard a big loud poof, and then and I was like, uh-oh. And I was wait for it, and then I see on the dashboard chime, and then low pressure warning, 0 psi. I'm like, oh no. And so I pulled into a parking lot, and sure enough, completely flat tire and a huge gash in the sidewalls. I'm like, this is not going to be easily fixed. So I didn't really know what to do. I've never had a flat tire before in my, almost 20 years of driving. Actually, no, 21 years of driving. I've never had a flat tire. I've driven hundreds of thousands of miles, never had to replace a tire. So I was like, all right, now what do I do? So Teslas, like many new cars, don't come with spare tires. There's nowhere to put it in the car. It just isn't there. So I don't know what the regulations are, like if you have to have some kind of way to fix this, but
clearly you don't, because you don't. I mean, what most cars do is when they don't come with a spare, they come with run flats, but I guess you get neither. You get no spare and no run flats.
That's not always true. My Golf R has neither a spare nor run flats. It has a fix-a-flat kit that it came with that sits in the back.
Yeah, the little can. Yeah, that's the hierarchy. But like in general, unless there's a particular reason, I assume the reason in your car is both to save weight and to save space, that it doesn't come with run flats tend to have worse performance and ride characteristics. So if it's like a performance car, they don't want to put run flats on it. Corvette being accepted because America. But yeah, I would like. It's obviously not a law because you can do that. But I'm actually surprised that I don't know. It's kind of surprised that the Teslas don't have run flats. I guess I never thought about it before. I know that a lot of the Teslas have harder tires for better mileage, right? But the performance models maybe less so. But you don't even have Fix-A-Flat anywhere that you're aware of? Casey, check his manual for him.
No, I don't. Unless it was in the front, which was stuck shut, which is a different story. But anyway.
Oh, God. Oh, now we're going to have to tell that story either now or later, but carry on.
We'll get there. So yeah, but what they do come with is roadside assistance that apparently is free. It was kind of cool, actually. So I open up the app on my phone, and you tap roadside assistance, and you answer like a couple of questions, like, what is it? Tires? Something else. And you hit tires, like, how many tires? 1. Okay. And then it's like, you submit the request, and it's like, all right, we'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. And sure enough, like a couple minutes after I submitted the request, I got this giant long text message series of like, all right, vehicles being dispatched from this company. It'll be there within 60 minutes, and it'll have a loaner tire and wheel. They will swap it on. They will bring your broken tire and wheel to the so-and-so service center, the nearest Tesla service center. It was great. And so sure enough, they said within 60 minutes. 20 minutes later, a guy shows up in a van with a wheel and a tire, and he attaches it to my car. 25 minutes after I requested it, he's gone. He's done. I'm on the road again. It was kind of amazing. And the deal was the loaner that he gave me. It's the same. It's a Tesla wheel, had a regular Tesla tire on it, not a snow tire, okay, but a regular Tesla tire on it, and it was the rim of it was spray painted. It's like graffitied. I'll put the picture as the chapter art here. It was like graffitied with like red Tesla logos, like smeary Tesla drippy spray paint logos. It said Tesla Mount Kisco on the side, like that's the dealership. And the guy was saying that they actually just started doing this because people would just never return the loaner wheels. Because the deal is they give you the loaner wheel, and then you're supposed to schedule a service appointment at whatever dealership they brought your rim to and go buy a new tire. Well, there's nothing really forcing you to do that, I guess. Like, you sign a thing on the roadside assistance thing, but like, it doesn't seem that they enforce it. So like he said, people just never return them because like, why would you? It's going to cost you a couple $100 to buy a new tire. So like you would just keep the loaner forever. So they spray painted it now to show, like, to kind of remind you that it's the loaner wheel of shame. Like, it looks horrendous. Like it's like some guy on Twitter said it looked like I ran over a trick or treater, like, which is fair.
Yeah, like again, go look at your podcast player, which hopefully supports chapter art. If you're envisioning a tire that's like spray painted red and it's like it looks like a regular wheel, but it's a red wheel, it's not a red wheel. It is literally a Tesla silver wheel that someone has haphazardly taken like a can of Krylon and just randomly put crap all over. It looks so bad. Like, it is not. They didn't try to make anything like it. Just the point of it is to look bad, I suppose. And it kind of amazes me that this is like an actual real large company's solution to this problem, which is, can we just make them ugly? Yeah, sure. I can go down to the store and get a can. I'll be there one Tuesday. Like, are they different colors? Is it color matched to his car? Because it is red and he's got a red car. Like, it's just fascinating. And yeah, and like, why wouldn't people, who's going to want to go and pay all that money? They just gave you a free tire and a wheel.
Right.
And people aren't thinking like, oh, well, the tread wear is different. And, in your case, it's not even a snow tire. They'll just keep driving it. That said, I'm not sure the incredible spray paint will deter people, because those same people who don't care that they have a mismatched tire with different tread wear might not also care that it's all spray painted red. And like, they're meaning to go to it, but they never get around to it. Especially if, like, let's say they have wheel damage. Like, say you had like damaged your wheel on that median. The wheel is like $600 probably, and then the tire is like $300 on top of that. Or you could drive around with an ugly wheel. Yeah, like
it totally makes sense why people don't frequently return these otherwise.
Yeah. And that's like, when you have like a spare tire, it's, it's not the same wheel, it's a smaller thing, and it looks ridiculous. And still I see people driving around on their, on their donuts, or where, like, it's especially hilarious in this day and age when cars, like every car, like the economy car for like $13,000 comes with like 20-inch wheels or something ridiculous. Like, just wheels have gotten so huge, but the spares haven't kept up. So if you have one of these little tiny things, it's like a roller skate wheel and this giant wheel well that fits 20-inch wheels. It's very strange. Anyway, yeah, don't replace single tires if you can help it, and don't keep the wheel of shame.